I remember a person, a wife, who told me in connection to a husband. She asked for prayers because the husband had gone astray. He was an alcoholic and couldn't hold a job. The only breadwinner in the house was this woman. And she came and told me, Father, do pray for my husband. But even as she said, pray for my husband, in the same breath, she also said, but I really don't think it will be of any use. I've asked so many priests to pray for him, but there has been no change at all. I don't think there will be any use in the prayers. And I found it very strange that she asked for prayers, and at the same time, she didn't believe that this kind of a person can change. The more I spoke to her, the more convinced she seemed to be that he's never going to change. And remember meeting this person once again for a retreat, and she told me the same thing. Father, do pray for my husband. And I asked, have you seen any change? She said, no, Father, don't expect any change. So I kept asking myself, then why are you asking for prayers if you don't believe that there will be a change? When you don't believe that there will be change, you actually don't believe in the power of God to change a human person. True, we make choices, and many of our choices do get us into situations where we turn our lives into a mess. But never undermine the power of God to transform, convert, and change a person. That is what happened with St. Paul. The word tells us he was not just any normal person who was against the Christians. Rather, even at Jesus' times, the Pharisees and the scribes were better. They still had a level of decency. They were still careful about how they expressed their displeasure of Jesus. But St. Paul, or Paul at that time, was blatant in his hatred for the Christians. So deep was the hatred that, as the scripture will say, when Stephen was being stoned to death, all of them came then, put their coats and their cloaks at the feet of Saul. And so shamelessly, he's taking care of their cloak so that no robbers will come and take it away. Here you have murderers in front who are murdering an innocent man. And he's safeguarding their cloak from thieves. Who is worse? The thieves or the murderers? Or maybe even Saul. And the word tells us when Stephen is stoned, Saul approves of it. Standing aside, not casting a stone, approving each person and encouraging each person to cast that stone and to murder the person in front of him, doesn't turn his face away, keeps looking at an innocent man getting murdered. So Paul was not just a common person who just normally disliked the Christians. Rather, he was a person who had so much of evil in him at that time. So much of anger and hate and bitterness. That bitterness to the extent that it was turning into the desire to kill, to persecute, be it men or women or children. And the scripture tells us clearly the Christians were terrified of the man. When Ananias was told by God in a dream that he's supposed to go and pray for Paul who is blind, Ananias says, I know this man. We know about him. They're terrified of the kind of person he was. And yet, we see the Damascus experience. We see that bright light that blinds Paul. And when that light speaks and tells Paul, Paul, why are you persecuting me? And the moment of change and transformation in the man, in spite of the kind of character he was, to what he becomes. This feast of the conversion of St. Paul is a very important feast for us in the church. It is very important because we all have people who we are praying for, whose history doesn't give us the confidence that there will be a change in their life. It could be your husband who is a drunkard. It could be your wife who is a nasty woman. It could be your children who have gone astray and have gone down pathways which seem from where it seems that they will never be able to come back. Maybe looking at their history, it doesn't give you any confidence that any change is going to take place in them. Maybe it makes you feel disappointed in even the power of prayer, because I don't see changes. I don't see transformation. All that I get to hear and all that I get to see are things that are sinful, that are destructive. These people will never change. Like that wife told me, Father, pray, but I don't believe anything's going to happen. But this feast for us is important because this feast is reminding us your loved one or the person you're praying for, the person who you believe is never going to change, can be touched by God and transformed. Whoever they are, that they can be touched by God and transformed. Their lives will change. I remember a young boy who once told me that he's making the retreat so that his grandfather will start having faith. He's a person who has a lot of special needs and he struggles, came in a wheelchair. And he's attending that retreat, and during the moments of the adoration, he doesn't have, one of his legs is extremely, it barely has any muscles on it. And he's just on this wheelchair, and during the adoration, when I lifted up the Blessed Sacrament to bless, he takes out the strap of his wheelchair. On his one good knee, he kneels. And he's crying out, and he's praying, a little child. I remember when he came for the counseling, he spoke to me and he said, I'm praying for my grandfather. I'm praying for my family. And it was such a blessing for me to see, I think it was 2 years after that, the whole family and the grandfather coming for that retreat and experiencing the power of the Lord. A little child. We all need to have that kind of faith. The conversion of St. Paul is reminding us, don't you dare undermine the power of God to bring about a change and conversion in the person you've been praying for. The Lord has the authority, the Lord has the power, and the Lord will listen to that prayer. Either today or tomorrow, you will get to see the glory of God when you're praying for the person whose life you want converted and changed. Dear brothers and sisters, today when we are praying along with St. Paul, pray especially for those extreme cases, the ones who everyone else has written off. You don't write them off. When you kneel and you pray in the presence of Jesus, don't write them off. Tell the Lord, if you could do it for St. Paul, you can do it for this person. And believe in the power of prayer. Sometimes when I read the story of Paul, though nothing is written about it in the scriptures, I just think to myself, I wonder which one of those Christians desperately prayed and told the Lord, Lord, change Saul. Lord, transform Saul. And that prayer was heard. You be the person who is praying for the person who has been written off as being an impossible case. And one day they will be touched because you didn't stop praying and you believed in the power of your Lord to touch, convert, change, and transform. Let's close our eyes for a moment. Bring to mind all those people who many in our society, our communities, our churches have written off as good for nothing. People who will never change in life. You bring them to mind on this feast. Ask for St. Paul to intercede for these kind of people. They are impossible cases. Everyone has given up hope, but we will not. Lord, these people need your touch. They need to be transformed. They need to change. Let your bright light of grace flood their darkened hearts and open their eyes to know the truth, so the truth will set them free. Then they will be free indeed.